This picture is by Botticelli. He was a Florentine artist who was very much admired during his lifetime. He worked for the Medici in Florence, one of the important patron families that we will see during this course, and he also worked for the Pope in Rome. He's active during the second half of the 15th century. His main works were painted between 1470 and 1490. The picture that you see on the screen is an Annunciation. It's a small picture. Ignore the surrounding space, which was originally occupied by a frame. It shows the moment when the Virgin Mary is said to have received news from the angel Gabriel that she will be the mother of Jesus, Son of God. As is fitting, Botticelli creates an air of quiet mystery for this event. Let your eyes wander through the painting. Both the angel and Mary bend their heads in humble gestures. The angel holds his cloak as he kneels. The Virgin modestly covers herself with her robes. We see her through a drawn curtain. This type of image, where we look into a room uninvited, will appear again in our course in several weeks, in the art of Vermeer, a 17th century Dutch painter. Notice the contrast between the hard stone and the straight angles of the architecture, and the softness and curves of the white fabric. Over the furniture behind the Virgin, the cloth is so thin that we can see what lies behind it. We are seduced by the particular magic of this painting as we're drawn into the painted world through this kind of detail. As in the last paintings that we saw by Fra Angelico, notice the emphasis on the idea that the painting is a window that opens into a space that seems realistic. It seems to have 3 dimensions. This is achieved through a system called linear perspective, which is characteristic of the early Renaissance. Let's use this painting as an example and explain this system. If we extend the lines that, in the illusion of the painting, are perpendicular to the picture plane, that is, to the panel or the canvas support, they would coincide in one or in a few points. By using the system, the painter creates the impression that the angel is inside of a realistic 3-dimensional space. Like when pop artists inserted the Coca-Cola logos in their painting in the early 1960s, this kind of perspective made the painting look up to date. It looked very modern to contemporaries. Notice also another feature at the time of the painting that was seen as very modern for the time, the use of classical architecture. And look also at the landscape barely visible behind the windows. Incorporating landscapes like these was an idea imported from the Netherlands, as we will see later on in this course. Remember, there's always a lot of borrowing in the history of art. This painting is called Venus and Mars. It's also by Botticelli. The long format of the painting shows that it was adapted to the shape of a piece of furniture, such as a bed or a chest or a bench. This is a reminder that art at the time had a function. It was made for specific places, and its themes made sense in those places. When looking at the art of Fra Angelico, we saw religious paintings, which were made for private devotion in a home or for churches. Here we see Mars asleep on the right. He was the god of war. His spear and helmet have been taken from him. Opposite is Venus, the goddess of love according to ancient mythology. Love here seems to have conquered war. She is awake and he's asleep. This may have been painted for a bedchamber, and the painting may refer to the power of love, specifically of carnal love. The sleep of Mars here suggests that this is a moment that follows lovemaking. In Botticelli, we find more mythological themes than we did in Fra Angelico. During the Renaissance, there was a true obsession with bringing back the life of classical antiquity. Its remains around Italy and other parts of Europe spoke of its greatness. In their goal of making buildings and statues look like Greek and Roman architectures and sculptures, sculptors could rely on the remains that lay in their midst. So could architects. But very few ancient paintings had survived. So what did painters do? They painted ancient themes, and also they found inspiration in statues. Here, the dress of Venus is inspired in clothing from classical statues, as is the pose of the two figures, which draws from an ancient sarcophagus that was actually known at the time. The painting is also about beauty. The whole picture shows the smooth beauty characteristic of Botticelli. The triumph of Venus over Mars is achieved through her beauty. Look at her hair and her dress. The picture is a beautiful poetic invention. It's an idea, a mood turned into an image. The title of this painting is The Birth of Venus. It's one of the most famous pictures by Botticelli. It shows the arrival of Venus from the sea onto the earth. It's hard to imagine a more important message. Just try to think of a world without love and without beauty. Those are the concepts that Venus represents here. Botticelli has given this his best effort. Venus is pushed ashore by a man who is blowing on her. He represents the gentle breeze that brings the spring. He actually carries the spring in his arms. The arrival of Venus means the beginning of life. The woman who received her is probably Flora, goddess of flowers. Ancient myths such as this can bring to us profound truths about the forces that rule the world and that rule our conduct. Here we see the power of love and of beauty, forces that generate life, just as spring brings life to nature. Venus is based on Greek and Roman statues. The graceful movements and proportions, the decorative use of line, the ornamental charm of the image are qualities characteristic of this artist. What Botticelli paints is different from what is found in nature or in works of art that inspired him. It's a translation of the natural world and of his sources into a different form. That translation into an original form is what we call art. Notice in this image how the neck of the goddess is too long, or her shoulders too low. Botticelli transforms reality at the service of his message. The woman is made exceedingly graceful and delicate so that she can express the idea of beauty and love, the greatest of gifts.